After being quarantined for more than the mandatory 14 days, Rodney Salama finally came back to his family after maintaining his negative coronavirus status. The joy of returning back from a solitude facility, more so while maintaining good health, could not be hidden from his wife's face. The questions her kids used to ask about dad's whereabouts already disappeared. Sylvia tells me that the family has never been this happy.
Tulikuwa tunaangalia mlango kila saa. Tukisikia gari kipita. Yeah, so he was very excited. Though the kids did know anakuja.
The husband spent 21 days in quarantine from the 25th of March this year, alongside about 108 other Kenyans who had just arrived in the country at a time when New York was already affected by coronavirus.
So it just happened that the period when I traveled, when I came back, they had just enforced a mandatory quarantine period. They say that you have to do a mandatory quarantine for 14 days. Before you are released to go home. Then once they verify that you're negative, then they release you to go home. So I left on the 21st, came back on the 25th. But then when we came back, initially when we were leaving, we were told we'll be coming back home to do quarantine at home. But when we came back, that's when the order was just starting. So then that means we'd have to start the mandatory quarantine. Initially we were told it's 5 days. So from the 25th, that means I'll be home by latest, let's say 30th. But that quickly changed because the 5 days changed to 14 days. And then we'd have to do a test within the 14-day period, specifically after the 8th day. Then once we turn negative, that's when we'll be released. So we did 8 days. We were tested on the 9th day. But after the testing, one of my colleagues in the mandatory quarantine facility that we were being held tested positive. So that meant that because of shared facilities, things like lifts, we had a common rest area. They said there would be a danger of transmission between us. So they held us for another 7 days. So the total quarantine period went to about 21 days. We left on the 22nd day.
Quarantine is often an unpleasant experience for those who undergo it. It comes with the experience of separation from loved ones, the loss of freedom, uncertainty over disease status, and boredom. While the thought of enduring a quarantine might seem daunting for many, Rodney's view of his experience in a quarantine facility clearly draws a picture that no one will think about.
So I can say it was really hard. Knowing that you have a family but you can't see them, you can't even relate to them, you can't even interact with them. The best we had is talking to them via either voice or video on the phones. But the fact that, there's always a nice feeling getting back home to your family and seeing your kids at the end of the day, relating to them, having known how their day was. But the fact that you can't really interact with them, I think that was the hardest part for me. And having known that, I'm used to being away for like 2 days, 3 days, then I'm back home and I stay with the kids for like 3 days. But now this was a lot longer than I had used to. So the first 2-3 days, I could almost cope with it. But after the third, fourth, fifth, as the days went along, it became harder and harder and harder. Because you wake up in the morning, you're used to waking up, let's say at home, but you wake up and you're in a totally different environment, in a room where you can't even relate to anyone, you're just alone, your family is not there. So it became harder and harder by the day. But I guess every person usually finds their way of coping with it. Yeah. As for me, I used to talk to my family a lot via either video or voice calls, and that would really calm me down. Just having known that they're okay and that they're doing better at home, and that they wish me the best wherever I am.
After spending 14 days in quarantine, which ended on April 6th, the government extended the period to 14 more days after one person in the same quarantine facility tested positive for COVID-19. Rodney, luckily, was released on day 7 of the second week. The only way to survive quarantine, especially after being exposed to areas where there is a surge of coronavirus, Rodney says, is to accept that it is in the interest of your family and all your loved ones. Each time he thought about how loud the solitude was, his family's phone and WhatsApp video calls reminded him that he must be strong for them, regardless of the situation.
The thing is, to be honest, that idleness of not being able to relate with people and the mind not being able to be distracted, you would imagine all sorts of things. Even one minor cough, you'd think you're already positive. Even a slight rise in temperature, you'd think, okay, this thing is already in me. So there were all those thoughts coming through my mind. I was thinking, of course, the hope is that you're negative. That is the hope for every person. So you're hoping that you'll be negative. At the time of testing, you'll be tested. You turn out negative and you head home. Every day, from the day one I went into quarantine, they kept on asking me, where are you? When are you coming? Mpaka nilikuwa run out of excuses. Because sometimes I would call na niko kwa kitanda in the morning. So they're wondering, are you in the bedroom? Because it looks like you're still sleeping. But are you in the bedroom? But we can't see you at home. So, I'd run out of excuses. So for me, I think nilikuwa overwhelmed by the fact that I just missed them so much. And I just wanted to see them again. Just to be able to hold them. Because tuko tunaongea kwa video, but I couldn't, that feeling of having people just around you. Yeah.
He says the free time in quarantine also gave him an opportunity to reflect on his life and how it may turn out, not forgetting that it was time for him to appreciate the little things he had never thought about.
I'd say, sometimes I just stay at home. I don't have anything to do, and I choose to stay at home. But now when you're told you need to stay home and not leave, that's when your mind starts racing, like you feel like you want to do things. So I can't say it was like the best of my times. I wish I never had to go through it because of the solitude that I felt during the period. But all I can say is I understood the essence of it, so it made it better. And to be honest, I wish I never went through the whole thing, because initially I thought it was 5 days, then it went to 14, then it was extended to 21. So you see, that's just when you think you're almost going home. Then you're told you need to stay another couple of days. When you're almost going home, you're being told, okay, to be another couple of days. So that bit was frustrating, to be honest. But it was basically in the interest of protecting the people that we relate to at home.
Now that he's back home, he says nothing makes one feel safe than their families and loved ones. As he cuddled his kids with joy, the one thing that remains in Rodney's mind is that he must remain optimistic and hopeful for the future until we all beat this coronavirus pandemic. Dicken Luvanda for Hope TV.